All right. Hey, Murray.
I could see reptiles when I seen all of them
Morning, morning.
tattoos.
Well, I mean,
In my eyes.
I can move it. It's just to pick up your voice.
I know, that's true.
They're the ones that's multicolored. Why are we doing this? Why? I said, just put a tail on these people. They'll be anything you want them to be. But they had no concept of what they were taking in college, and one of them said she was taking dance. Oh, that's gonna get you a long way in there. But our society has taught these people, and I saw it when the generations come up, when they started, all that they're doing, when somebody come up with all the bling bling gold and all like that, it made them want it so bad, they wanted to know what they were doing to get it. Oh, they're selling drugs. Well, I wanna do that, I wanna be rich. I wanna do it. Nobody said no.
All right.
Nobody said no.
Dave's in
What?
the bathroom. He's
Yeah, it's all
gonna be
right.
right here.
Yeah, we got some. We're kind of
Get your
loosey
hair cut,
goosey.
didn't you?
Yeah, a while back. Yep.
How was your trip to Florida? I bet it's hot though. I'm from Florida and I don't want to go back.
We actually went to Savannah first. My son's high school team won the state championship in baseball.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
So it's kind of been around, every which way. So it was good. Just been away and
Very cool.
relax a little bit.
Yeah.
And cry when you went to eat. Cost you $150 to get a hamburger or something. Ridiculous.
It's getting crazy.
I bought $72 worth of groceries last night, man, it didn't even cover the bottom of the boat.
Yeah.
Oh, I
And I
know. You
remember when I
gotta
was
stretch,
living
you
on
gotta
my
stretch your
own.
money. Tuna, pasta, little bags of egg noodles. I mean, you gotta stretch your money when you ain't got no money. I know
Right
exactly.
now.
I was a single mom. I tell you, you had to stretch your money a lot.
Eggs used to
Lots
be
of
the
bread.
highest eggs you could pay for. Now they're the cheapest on the
It's,
shelf.
Kool-Aid
it's hard, man. Water.
and eggs. That's the main important thing. And to stretch, stretch, stretch.
Yeah. Well, even the eggs are getting up there.
It is. It
The
is.
main things we used to go to the store for was cornmeal, flour, mayonnaise, because we had the milk there with the cow. When the milk went dry in the cow, we had to go buy milk, but we couldn't give eggs away because all the neighbors had eggs.
Even hamburgers gotten high, and that
Give
used to be
milk
cheap.
away to the neighbors that didn't have, the
Yep.
little ones that wanted milk, we milked the cow. We had our hogs, we had the barn, we had the smoker house, we called it, full of
We
meat.
eat a lot of chicken.
Mm,
And we
I remember having a lot of like hamburger helper stuff.
That's kind of what I'm gonna make for the funeral, but it's homemade.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make.
Yeah, I mean, you could throw in some
It's,
some
I'm
egg
gonna do
noodles or whatever.
something like that with stewed corn and some peas and little green peas. Because kids might like it. And it's got pasta in it, hamburger.
Yeah.
But
Pasta.
I chop the onions real fine because some kinds people don't. And
yeah.
But it's in there.
Yeah.
They don't taste it as much.
Yeah. We'll have to come up with the get those Depression era recipes
Yeah,
out.
Soups. I do a lot of soups, but Dave will not eat any soup in the summertime. He said that is winter food, but I can eat it. He made that Brunswick stew Friday, so I just wanted enough, to broth to make some chicken and dumplings. Oh, them things were so good. I gave him the hamburger helper thing.
Yeah.
He don't eat the. It's a cheap thing to make and it's easy.
Yeah. 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 Get ready, folks.
I know.
It looks
we
like
gotta
it's
learn
gonna
how
get
to
worse
cook.
before it gets better.
Oh, yeah, they talking $6 a gallon, probably by August.
Start your victory
And
gardens if
know,
you
they
haven't
talk
already.
They talk about the mothers are not finding the formula. You
No.
can make homemade formula, just as
Yeah,
good.
Karo syrup and
Well,
all
you
this
do
other
the
stuff.
Karo syrup, the water, and you do the box of non-dairy powder
Yeah.
creamer, the powder milk. That is a formula right there.
Well, and they may come to it. Goat's
But they
milk.
won't say nothing on TV about it. They just wanna complain,
Well,
but
all that
a
stuff-
lot of generations
It's
don't know
not
how to
been.
cook.
It's not.
really-
Okay, we're getting off topic here.
I know.
We're
That's
getting
true.
off topic.
Aren't you glad you don't have any on bottles?
Yeah, I am.
bet.
I am. Now, we still are, part of those groups and know a lot of people that are feeding. And,
Oh, yeah.
it's a little scary, especially for those who can't, nurse for whatever reason.
Well, there is a lot of women that can't
Yeah,
nurse.
they
I
can't.
was lucky I could do that.
Yeah,
but-
so.
But when I stopped, I put her straight on goat milk.
Well, even we supplemented with formula for a while, but I mean, even the formula is expensive, even if you could find
Yes.
it, So
It's very expensive.
I had my next oldest daughter had to have Nutramigen, which was the highest dollar hormone on the market, 'cause she had reflux.
Oh, yeah.
She couldn't do goat's milk, she couldn't do anything.
yeah,
Well, that's when you switch to almond milk with a little bit of Caro syrup.
yeah.
Oh, it's lactose-free now, I mean.
It is, it's lactose free.
All right.
Gave me some the other day, she said, what is this? She said,
Don't
"Daddy,
even wait
taste
for
this."
Dave,
She
let's
tasted
just,
what
he's
tell
got
me
my
what-
Bible now.
We're getting behind, so we need to get started. All right. So Revelation session 6, the church in Philadelphia. That's what we're covering today, and I hope everybody had a chance to watch the video. It was really good, and there's a lot to it. So just like every time before, we're going to read it first, and then we'll have our discussion about it. But I like to read it first just so everybody's on the same page. We have it kind of primed in our mind.
What is that again?
Revelation chapter 3, starting at verse 7. Revelation chapter 3, starting at verse 7.
Okay.
And it says, "To the angel of the church in Philadelphia write, these are the words of him who is holy and true, who holds the key of David. What he opens no one can shut, and what he shuts no one can open. I know your deeds. See, I have placed before you an open door that no one can shut. I know that you have little strength, yet you have kept my word and have not denied my name. I will make those who are of the synagogue of Satan, who claim to be Jews, though they are not, but are liars, I will make them come and fall down at your feet and acknowledge that I have loved you, since you have kept my command to endure patiently. I will also keep you from the hour of trial that is going to come on the whole world to test the inhabitants of the earth. I am coming soon. Hold on to what you have so that no one will take your crown. The one who is victorious I will make a pillar in the temple of my God. Never again will they leave it. I will write on them the name of my God and the name of the city of my God, the New Jerusalem, which is coming down out of heaven from my God. And I will also write on them my new name. Whoever has ears to hear, let them hear what the Spirit says to the churches." So, this is a pretty good letter, as opposed to the one in Sardis that we talked about last week. And in fact, this is the only other church, that of the 7, that there are 2 that did not really have a admonishment against them, and this is the other one, the church at Philadelphia. Now, Philadelphia was a city toward the end of this postal route. It kind of makes a U shape, and what was the church? Thyatira was kind of at the top of the U, and now we're headed back down. Sardis, Philadelphia, and then Laodicea down. And in this city, it was a decent-sized city at the time. It ran by Roman rule, all that. But in AD 19, which is a little bit before this church, or before this letter was written to this church, there's a huge earthquake in this region. If you look back at the historians of antiquity, they say it's like the biggest earthquake we've ever seen. And it destroyed Philadelphia. It also destroyed Sardis, and it also damaged a lot of these other cities that we've already talked about. Now, the reason we didn't bring it up before is because by this point, AD 70-ish, 80-ish, these cities have been rebuilt. So, the church at Sardis were not really applicable. But for some reason, the city of Philadelphia, the church at Philadelphia, not only was it extremely damaged, it hadn't fully recovered because for some reason there were lots of aftershocks that continued to damage the city longer than the other cities. And for some reason, Rome didn't really help them out as much. And so when we're seeing this, when Jesus is writing to them, some of that is coming through here. when he says, hold on to what you have, when he says, I will open the door, no one will shut. And then, of course, the persecution that's going on here as well. There's a lot going on that Jesus is referencing that they in that city would have recognized. And so Rome basically helped them out in the fact that they, exempted them from tribute for a few years to help them rebuild, but never really gave them assistance like they got the other cities. And I guess that was maybe based on Rome's, what they thought was important, like this city's more important than that city or whatever. So they kind of felt left out, right? And so that's kind of in the back of the mind here in this city of Philadelphia. Like, you're of little strength. You couldn't build back yourself, right? That kind of reference to it. And so the other interesting thing about this particular church is the intro. All the other letters, you'll know from, this vision in chapter 1, John's vision of Christ, he's got hair like wool, eyes of like burning fire, right? This vivid imagery. And each letter would take a piece out of that, right? To kind of show, like, I am this person, I am this. And it all kind of relates to what they're going through. This one says, the words of him who is holy and true, who holds the key of David, what he opens no one can shut, and what he shuts no one can open. That doesn't come from this vision that John had at the beginning. It's actually a reference going all the way back to Isaiah 22. It's a messianic prophecy. And what he was saying here is, he's still identifying himself. I am the Messiah. But for some reason, he didn't follow the pattern that we have from the other churches. Now,
See a little bit better insight to that to me. That we're just saying it, you don't really grasp it. But I thought he done a pretty good job.
no, I think the author did a really good job of bringing that out in the video, because it's something I would have overlooked for sure.
Then you close and shut another door. It's like,
Yeah.
okay,
And, you think about that, like, what doors were shut? What doors were open for this church? Well, I mean, earthquake damage. They're being shut out of the synagogues here. I don't know if the author got into too much of this, but in the early church days, early Christians were considered a part of it, like more like a Jewish sect, right? And they're highly related, right? But to the outside culture, there wasn't really a difference, right? They're like, oh, well, they're, kind of think of it like left-wing Jews, right? Instead of being their own separate thing at the time. And so early Christians would still worship at the synagogues, probably at, different times. And they would also be on the synagogue rolls at the time because they were still highly related. Now, even in Jewish culture, they're like, well, they're Jews, sort of, maybe, kind of. And that, when we read about what Paul's talking about, there's not Jew or Gentile, right? And, you should accept one another, right, through the Messiah. That's kind of, they were like halfway there. And then over time, there was a split. And the Jews are finally like, you're too crazy for us, right? Jesus, when you're saying that Jesus is the one true God, the Christ, and they're like, well, we don't believe that. Well, obviously there's a major division there. And so Christians were kind of kicked out from the synagogues at that time, and they were written off. So, and this is why you see all this reference toward the end. I will write on them the name of my God. I will write on them the name of my city. He's saying, I'm going to write on you myself as it's an identifying mark. Like, you're one of mine, okay?
Right, and the video said something about the synagogue is actually Satan lying to the people.
So what was happening was now the Jews were turning on the early Christians, and they were lying. We already had earlier churches mentioned, they're already misrepresenting, right? But now they're just straight out lying about Christians. They're saying, hey, they're, vampires. You know, we talked about this, right? You're eating the body, drinking the blood, right? You know, you could see how that could be easily misconstrued to people who don't know, right?
It was like what you was talking about with earthquakes.
Mhm.
I didn't say nothing about the earthquakes. But,
Yeah, it doesn't say it.
about the earthquakes, and then later on, well, I'll get ahead of it, but he said his hand was on, he was protecting them like the Israelites coming through the desert.
Mm-hmm.
But what they did when that happened, they had a visual. Some of them had a visual to see that the ones in his church did not get as much damage, or the people were not hurt. So they saw real nice. What's going on? What kept them from being annihilated?
Yeah.
What kept them from doing it? They had a visual.
Mm-hmm.
So then the ones that saw it told it, and the ones that had ears didn't hear it.
Yeah. So there's a lot going on here, and we'll come to that in a second. But yeah, for sure, the imagery of holding on to what you have. I mean, I can imagine that some of them lost their homes, whatever, especially during earthquakes or during this persecution. Hold on to what you have. Right?
Like I said, we studied that in Israel when they was coming out of Egypt, and they talking about the hand of God
Well,
with them because they didn't do it, but then you hear it in this story.
So, yeah, you're right. So, for those not familiar, if you go back to the Exodus and the 10 plagues, I think the author brought this out. I can't remember. I do a lot more studying, so it's like kind of all mixed in my mind here. But I think the author brought this out. In the Exodus, right, when it talks about the hail that was coming down, it says God put his hands over Goshen, which is where the Israelite slaves lived, and kind of, you can imagine God's hand over while hail was coming down, protected them, right? They still saw the damage, and they still, experienced it around them, but they themselves were protected. And a lot like what the church would be, that same imagery is still here in the Church of Philadelphia. Like, I know you're going through it, but my hand is covering you from the full devastation
It would protect
going
you.
on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Protected.
Yeah. So he says, he's talking about this door. What he opens, no one can shut, and what he shuts, no one can open. All right, messianic prophecy, God's sovereignty, right? Basically, God's in control. That's what this is saying. If I open the door, it's going to stay open. If it's when Jesus was talking with Peter, and Peter made that profession of faith, like, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God, and Jesus says, on this rock I will build my church, and even I forget the wording, even hell itself cannot withstand. Yeah, he's saying, like, all the forces of evil cannot stop this from happening. The gate's open, and you can't shut it.
What he says in Ecclesiastes, when you look at what's following, there's nothing new under the sun.
Oh, I love Ecclesiastes.
That's what's going on here. There's nothing new under the sun. This is still happening. It just keeps rolling over.
And that's why it's so important for us to study the Bible, because themes in the Bible repeat,
Repeat.
Yeah, they do.
right? And I hope that's something you're picking up on as we study this, right?
Right.
God's methods haven't really changed. He's protected his people in the Old Testament. He's protected his people in the New Testament. He wants people to be faithful to him in the Old Testament. He wants people to be faithful in the New Testament, right? And these things are universal. They don't change. God hasn't changed, right? Now, through his redemptive plan, we now have Jesus as the cornerstone. We know how this salvation is going to work out, but it's not like God has changed. We're like, oh, that didn't work. I should try this. No, right? I'm going to protect my people then. I'm going to protect them now. I'm going to protect them. And if you read this as for you or to us today, I'll protect you in the future.
What
Now.
does it take to remove the stumbling block?
Mhm.
Walking and you stumble. If you don't hurry up, move that out of your way, you're going to fall over it again.
Well, you got to take the plank out of your own eye first. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Like I said, you've got to do something. Somebody's got to move it
Yeah.
in order for somebody else. I pick people for my birthdays all the time.
Yeah. I mean,
You had to be clean out my bath. Your birthday before mine, clean my bath out so I can walk a little easier with it.
well, yeah. I mean, we all help each other out, kind of like that. Yeah, I could see that.
Straighten it out on the way.
Yeah. So he says here, I know your deeds, which I think he says to pretty much every church here. I don't know. I didn't look back, and I can't say that for sure, but obviously, I think the idea is he knows all the church's deeds, right? I don't think there's a question about that. I have placed before you an open door that no one can shut. I know that you have little strength, yet you have kept my word and not denied my name. So this open door that he's placed before Philadelphia, right? What did the author say that was?
It was the key of David.
Yeah, the key of David.
Yeah, and then
Open the door.
Open door was their job to. Your part was to bring them to Jesus, which is the open door.
Yeah, exactly. So if you think about, Jesus gave a parable about a big dinner party that a king was hosting. And he invited a bunch of people. And in the parable it says that each one of these people that he invited they all sent back a response with an excuse of some kind of why they couldn't come. And the king, he's like, man, he got fed up with it. So he sent his servants out. He said, go out to the town, go out to the roads, and just get anybody who will to come in. Right? And implied in that is, right, the door is open for anybody that will come. Right?
Right.
Now, it's not, certain people in that parable, he's talking about the Jews. Right? The Jews had this invitation, this special invitation to God, and they failed. Right? For whatever, like various reasons. They didn't hold up to their end of the deal. He invited them, but they didn't come. And so now he's inviting the Gentiles to the kingdom, right? The inner court, right? Because the king is holding this, the king's party. It's kind of that same idea. The door's been opened. Our job is to invite as many people that will come, right? That's our job. That's the Great Commission, if you will. Invite anyone who come, anybody. We don't know who all that will be. And some people that you think would be responsive are not, and some people that you don't think will be responsive are.
It's like us. It's hard to get our friends to come to church.
Yeah.
It's the same way. It's still doing the same thing.
It's the same idea. And, it was that way then, and it's that way now. So, but our job is the same, right? We keep inviting them. We keep loving them. We keep telling them. We keep answering questions. And it's going to be everybody's individual response to God at the judgment, right?
We're just an example to God's word.
Yeah.
And our friends watch us.
Yeah.
Well, last Friday night, I went to the rodeo.
Oh, no. Here we go.
It was
What happens at the rodeo stays at the rodeo,
What
Brian.
what happened was I got given some Kenneth Murphy cards to hand out.
Okay.
And more people that I gave the cards to were saying, we need God back in this country.
Mm-hmm.
And at least I gave away probably 20 cards.
Okay.
Out of more than 3/4 of those people had that to say.
Yeah.
In one form or
We
another.
definitely need that.
And this was at a rodeo.
Mm-hmm.
We've got to get God back in this country. We've got to have more Jesus. We've got to have it. Response from that is, I'm saying, here we are with politics.
Well, I would venture to say you're probably at a little bit of a biased arena. I doubt you would get the same response if you were at, like, I don't know, a Braves game or maybe a different type of concert, right?
This is, I said, wow. And the only thing you can do is agree.
Yeah.
And, hey, great, glad to hear you say it.
I'm glad to hear you saying it, but, what are you doing about
A
it?
bunch of rodeo people are roughnecks, you know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
well, I get that. I
We need
get
to
that.
shut down the media.
But what are you doing about
You
it?
find out that
We need to go out to the people.
We go out to the people. I mean, reach,
We need to.
right? And, that's,
I hand out cards, give them
we got to
churches,
go out in
give them
yeah.
where the.
Be that example and reach out to people, and that's what we do. So, and that's what we try to do here through various means. We had a schools out party on Friday, which went very well. We had some children here that were just, loosely associated with other people, and we got to talk to them and talk to their parents, and, we outreached to people.
Yeah, we send out cards to the church, what we do.
Yeah.
That's what we need to do.
Yeah, we do Facebook ads, we do all that stuff, right? And that's, But we keep on keeping on.
Just remember now, a lot of people are boycotting that Facebook.
That's right.
I mean, I done.
That's why I'm sending Mickey Mouse keychains to everybody now.
Oh, yeah, but
Man,
what
nobody.
he is what he
You guys, come on.
I know it.
is God draws the lonely, the brokenhearted, and what's going on with our country right now, people are wanting answers.
But we need more outreach, yeah.
Yeah, the
Definitely.
outreach is here now.
Yeah, and people want
They
answers.
just have a big
Yes,
convention
they
in
do,
Atlanta.
they do,
And we have Christianity has the answers,
yes.
right? Now, maybe it's not what you want to hear. Hey, turns out you can't just sleep with everybody, right? We have a moral code that, but there's an answer and there's a reason for that.
Right.
So, coming back to Philadelphia, we're getting a little bit off track. I know that you have little strength, yet you have kept my word and not denied my name. Now, this wasn't the most powerful church. This wasn't like big and flashy. This wasn't a mega church, right? It says you have little power. Little power physically, right? Like maybe it's a small church.
I thought it was small.
Maybe they're being attacked, right? And it's sucking up a lot of their strength. But that's not what Jesus values. Jesus values faithfulness. Yet you have kept my word. That's what's a value of God, right? You have not denied my name. That's what God values, right?
Right.
That's the upside down kingdom right there, right? He's not saying, hey, you're the biggest church. No, he doesn't say that. He says he's acknowledging the fact, you little power.
Yeah, we're a small church compared to some.
Yeah. And I would hope that if we had to pick a letter that represented Bethel Baptist Church of Rocky Mount, I would hope that it'd be the Church of Philadelphia, right? This is the letter I would like to receive from God, right? I'll let you make that judgment for yourself. I think, personally, I think we are closer to the church in Philadelphia than Sardis, right? Now, are we perfect in every way? No. But you think the church in Philadelphia was perfect? No. They weren't perfect either. But God's not admonishing them for not being perfect. He's congratulating, thanking them for keeping the faith.
Being real people.
Yeah, they're real people. I will make those who are of the synagogue of Satan, that's a phrase we've heard before, who claim to be Jews, though they are not. These would be the Pharisees, Sadducees, but are liars. I will make them to come down and fall at your feet and acknowledge that I have loved you. Now, where it was starting at here and going on, since you have kept my command to endure patiently, I will also keep you from the hour of trial that is going to come to the whole world to test the inhabitants of the earth. There seems to be a switch here. Like we're moving into prophecy, like something in the future that God is going to protect them from. Now, from history, I don't know if we can have any certainty that at some point the Jews in this city fell down before the feet of the church at Philadelphia and acknowledged this. I think that this is something that is yet to happen or will happen in the future, maybe after the Great Tribulation. It's unclear where this happens. I don't see it in history. That's kind of why I'm thinking, well, it's the future. And then we have this next verse, which goes along with it. Since you have kept my command, I will keep you from the hour of trial that is going to come, clearly in the future, on the whole world to test the inhabitants of the earth. And so far, we haven't had an entire world test. Even at our worst points, like say, the peak of World War II, or the peak of the Black Plague, or the peak of the Great Depression, right? The entire world was not engulfed in that. We have not experienced it yet. And so a lot of people, and I would tend to agree with them, think that this is a reference to the rapture in the time of the Great Tribulation, which is mentioned later on. And that rapture being the great calling up of the church, right? So instead of, if you think back of Israel in Egypt, right, being protected by the hand of God, the hand of God is actually going to pick us up while the whole world goes through this. It's going to protect us from the wrath that is going to be poured out on the world. Now, we're going to talk more about the tribulation stuff in the last session when we also talk about dispensationalism and what that means, because they tie together a lot. But that's kind of what people refer this to. This is going into the future. And this Philadelphia, the people that hold the faith and do not deny the name of Christ, will be protected from this hour of trial here. Does that make sense to everybody? So, this is definitely coming in the future. Some people would say that this is not referencing the rapture, but it's referencing the coming of Domitian, which is what the author brings out. Because he is specifically, and I want to bring this out right now, and we'll talk about it later too. He is specifically not focusing on like any prophecy outside of these particular letters. He's limiting himself to like just these letters and what they mean. But outside of that, right, if we look beyond and try to connect these with events, you start to see that maybe these reference other events coming in the future. And that's kind of where we start tying into dispensationalism and all that. And that's why he specifically says, I'm not covering that, because it's a bigger topic in of itself, right? So he would say that it's the coming of Domitian, which, hey, makes sense. And if we look at the patterns in the Bible, we see patterns of what we call shadows and types. We see this forebearer that isn't quite complete. Like something happens first that's like it, but not exactly the fulfillment of the prophecy. So, for example, think of like David coming as the Messiah, right? King David, great king, did a lot of great things for Israel, but was he the Messiah? No. But he was close. I mean, he gave you an idea of what that Messiah could look like, but he had his own moral failures, right? And then we have the perfection in Christ. This will be like that. Domitian was kind of like a baby trial, but the full trial will come later, right? And that the Bible works like that a lot. Think about even the sacrifice system. You sacrifice an animal. It's kind of like the final sacrifice of Jesus Christ, right? But it's only like those. It only covers for sins at that time, for that family, right? Whereas Jesus Christ covers the sins of everybody for all time, right? It's kind of like a baby version.
Does that add up to our judgment day or something?
Well, it's leading up to that, right? I mean, you could think of, well, Judgment Day is kind of like the end, right? So there's not really shadows and types at Judgment Day. Like, it is the end. So, but you could kind of see these, that's how God works, right? He kind of, even in blessings, right? He gives you, think of let's see. If you look at Egypt and the famine and Joseph, right? He was, given by his brothers, sold into slavery, blah, blah, blah. He comes to be second in command of Egypt, and then he blesses his brothers with forgiveness and food, right? But in the future, it says that, Jesus Christ is, the living water, like, what do you call it? Living waters, right? Like, you drink of me and never thirst again, right? That kind of thing, right? Right? God's provided wells and food in the past, but it's really pointing to Jesus Christ and his ultimate fulfillment of what you need, like spiritual growth.
Well, like the video said that Jesus loves those who reach out to him.
Yeah.
Is what the
Yeah.
video says. Is it kind of the same thing what you're saying?
Yeah. No, he totally loves for us to reach out.
He loves it when you reach out.
Yeah. I mean, why do you think God commands prayer?
Exactly.
Right?
Being glad to be alive.
Yeah, some of us think that, we're bothering God when we pray to him. You're not bothering God. He's infinite. He wants to hear from you. And he wants to know that you're faithful And, when you recognize that you're dependent on God, right? That's just a sign of your maturity, right? I mean, it seems like we're going to come into some hard times here soon, right? And we're going to find out,
Say that, yeah.
is your faith in the supply chain, the global supply chain, or is it in God?
Gotta
Well,
use
I can
what
tell you
got.
right now, the global supply chain is not looking good, right?
Gotta use what you got. That's
Yeah.
what you can do.
Right? We'll be out there cutting off dandelion heads and eating them again. Be like the old days. I got a recipe for kudzu flour if anybody wants some.
Well, people gonna be fighting over those little berries, they used to call snake berries, you can still eat them.
Yep, berries. Start digging up roots of plants and eating them again.
Well, I'll tell you what.
Good times.
When I last watched Daniel Boone, he had a rerun on the TV, and I was looking at him, how they lived in Boonesboro.
Mm-hmm.
I said, wow, you know what? It ain't far from, we may have to go back to that, building us some forts up, and everybody has to survive, and everybody has to do the part.
Hey man, I've already marked out.
That way.
I got like 4 or 5 squirrels that come in the yard. That'll get me by a
Got
little
something
bit.
there.
One meal.
I've got some wild muscadines up in the trees, so I got that. The dog, maybe.
You just have to learn how to cook, that's all. You
Even
can't go
my
out to
daughter
eat
is
no more.
starting to read about
That's right.
remedies now. She said, Daddy, I said, yeah, you got milk thistle right here, you got this, you got that.
Hey man,
You
we-
can eat the whole pine tree if you want to.
people get creative when they get real hungry.
Yeah.
But what's your faith in? Right? Coming back to it, like what's your faith in? Right? I don't know. I mean, you're going to have to make that choice. I know what my faith is.
Is the hand of God on you or not? That's what he
Yeah.
wants to know.
And even, so let's talk about this, right? We've talked about like the benefits, right? God's opened this door for Philadelphia, but he could also close the door, right? Some doors are closed, and we think of that, well, that's, I want to go through that door. I want to be there. But sometimes it's for our benefit, and it's ultimately for the benefit of God's kingdom. If he closes the door, we're not meant to go there yet, right? And so we have to be aware of what's going on. Like some doors are not open to us, right? We have to be mindful of these things. Like if God wanted us to, fly supplies for I'm just thinking, like there's a famine in Africa, and somebody says, well, we should fly supplies out to Africa. Well, in this church, we may not have the resources or the connections, to find a pilot to load up enough supplies to make it worthwhile to, fly a plane of supplies over there. Maybe that's not a door that's open to us. Now, I'm not saying it couldn't be, don't get me wrong, but we have to be aware of the things that are open to us. As opposed to when that hurricane came and hit like Mexico Beach and all that, somebody had an idea and the doors were open that we could park a tractor trailer up there at Ashley Park, and we got it loaded full of supplies, and we had people that could drive tractor trailers to take it down. That door was open to us. So, I mean, we just have to be aware of what's there versus what's not, and let's not try to force our way through a closed door.
Are y'all aware that the toilets with the little sprayers are in demand right now? People are.
By days?
Yeah.
By days.
They're being installed now. They're on the market.
Yeah, man.
Of the short toilet paper shortage.
Makes sense to me.
So, that's, I
I
thought.
haven't heard that one.
That's very European of you, Brian, but
Well, that's what I'm saying, but
Right.
now they're in America and the market's open for them.
yeah. I mean,
Be ready.
So you take yours at home and hook the water hose up.
Yeah, well, see, I go outside.
still beats a corn cob, not gonna lie.
Yeah, really.
And they don't mail out Sears catalogs anymore, Brian. What are we supposed to do?
If you're one of those that can't get your eyes open in the morning, just go, and do business. and Wake up.
They can be heated, Brian.
Really?
Yeah, that's part of the reason. Like you're supposed to mount an electrical outlet next to your toilet, and most Europeans don't have, or most
Just
American
hook it up
houses
and
don't
there you
have
go.
that.
That's right.
So,
It's here, it's gonna be coming.
oh yeah, it's gonna be coming, and I don't have an unlimited supply of corn cobs, man.
I just stay stocked up, that's all I can
Yeah,
do.
yeah. That's all you can do. Anyway.
Well, I'm just.
What's your faith in?
going on,
What's your
whatever's
faith in, Brian? By days or God?
Whatever's your shortage, there's gonna be something to take its place.
Well,
Oh, yeah.
people adapt.
Always paper.
So in verse 11, as he's finishing up, he says, I am coming soon. Hold on to what you have so that no one will take your crown. The one who is victorious, I will make a pillar in the temple of my God. Never again will they leave it. I will write on them the name of my God, the name of the city of my God, the new Jerusalem, which is coming down out of heaven from my God, and I will also write on them my new name. So he's giving these ideas, like we've already talked about in the past. In fact, I think it was right before this, Sardis, talking about being the temple of God, right? God is creating a body, right? The body of Christ. We talk about this imagery where, the hands, the feet, the body of Christ, where Christ is the head. He's the leader, right? Well, he also talks about it in terms of we're all making up this temple of God. Like God is living inside of us, but we all together are making a temple where God will dwell with us together. But in here, he's given this imagery of those who are victorious will be pillars in this temple, like a great sign of respect. And they would have recognized this, right, from their pagan temples. I was trying to think of a different word, but temples is it. Where you've seen those pictures from the what's left over, right? They've got these huge marble pillars, right, that support the structure. They're just massive. You're talking about pillars that are 20, 30, 40 feet tall, solid marble. I mean, like how they move this stuff, beyond me, right? And he says, he's given that example. You're going to be made in the pillars of this temple. You're going to be like the main support. Like we've already talked about Christ being the cornerstone of this temple. And that's, if you're familiar with building, that's how you set the cornerstone, and you have, straight line references. And you can kind of build off of this cornerstone. Well, you got to have supports in your building. And so you would have pillars, in this case, for the temple. Now we would have beams and, all kinds of stuff. But you'd have pillars to support this structure. So you could build on top of it. So other people could, go higher than you, because they got to have support from the bottom. Science has this saying that, science is built on the shoulders of giants, right? Well, that's kind of the same idea here, right? There's no way that we could be here if our ancestors didn't start this church. That if somebody didn't reach out to those people and, introduce them to Christ, right? The only reason we're here is because of the actions of those before us, all the way back to Christ, right?
Right.
And so that's how we're able to reach the gospel, reach people with the gospel today. So you're going to be made into pillars. You're going to be acknowledged for your sacrifice, right? That's what he's saying. You've been shut out of the temples, right? The physical building's been destroyed, but what you're building up is your reward in heaven, right? That's kind of what he's saying. In this new city, this new Jerusalem, which is coming down out of heaven, he's like, that's where this is going to be. And you're going to have the name of my God. You're going to have the name of the new Jerusalem, and you're going to have the name of my new name. And so it's going to be kind of like think about like those memorial bricks, right? It's got your name, right? In memorial, right? That's going to be you. You're going to be marked out and set aside. You're going to have honor in heaven. And that's a great reward, because in heaven, think about this. Like on earth, we think of honor and privilege based on wealth, right? Well, we'll give you honor. Like if somebody shows up in like a Ferrari, I guarantee there's going to be like a mini crowd around this, because it's expensive, it's unusual, it's exotic, right? God doesn't care anything about that, right? What he cares about is your faithfulness. And it's going to be, he's saying, I'm going to acknowledge you for that, right? It doesn't cost anything. Anybody could do this, right? Or persevere. But that's what God values, and that's what he's going to set aside, right? The wealthy, That's wood, hay, and stubble, he says later on. Like, that's going to be tested through fire, and it's not going to last. So where are your priorities? It's kind of where this is going from. And then he ends, like every other letter, he who has ears to hear, spiritual awareness, let them hear. Not everybody's going to hear this. Some people will not persevere. Some people will not hear the gospel. Some people will not accept it. But for those who will, just like everybody's invited, like we shout the invitation, hey, party at my house. Like we go down to, the interstate. Party at my house, party at my house. We hold up a sign. Not everybody's going to show up. They're going to say, I got to wash my hair. I got to do this. I got to run my kids to baseball games. I got to do this. I got to do that. Yeah, a million excuses. But everybody's invited. But whoever shows up, right? And God has impacted that the same way. So, Church of Philadelphia, good church. Not the best, not the biggest church, not the strongest church from a material sense, but a small, let's say, motivated, holy, pure church. And I would hope that Bethel Baptist Church would be closer to this church than any other church. And I think for the most part we are. Are they perfect? Is Philadelphia perfect? No, because they're a church with human beings. And we're all, some of us worse than others.
Well, we have ancestors in here that goes on, and then we got a great preacher.
Yeah.
That keeps this church strong.
Yeah, leadership is
definitely.
core to a church, and you can tell a lot by the church based on its leader.
That's right.
You was talking about people running up to things. I know right after a divorce with me, the thing I missed the most was my kids running out to me when I got home, or they wouldn't expect me coming up on the porch and hear them jumping up in the house. Dad's home, Dad's home.
Mm-hmm.
Meet me at the driveway, running out there when I'm getting out of my truck and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I miss that more than anything, because I have people that ask me, do you miss your wife that much? No, I really miss my kids running out there, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
It was sad, but that's what it was.
Yeah.
They were running out there.
Well, we used to do that with my dad. He was a truck driver, and he was always gone. So when he
Okay.
got home, it was like, oh, Dad's home.
Oh.
You're
Dad's
with
here.
Mom all the time.
Yeah.
But Dad is
That was
different.
like,
Yeah.
Here is my world. Coming
Mhm.
inside an empty house, and you wouldn't
Mhm.
hear all the noise.
And the ultimate hope that Christ gives us is, here on earth, things are flawed. We're flawed. Our partners are flawed. Sometimes our parents are flawed, right? There's all kinds of flaws that separate us by some extent.
We were mentioning, I need to get me a sign that says it was my grandfather's fault.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or,
It was my
don't blame me, blame Clinton. Are we still on that? That's, whatever it is,
Yeah,
right?
just- we
But
can
we're
do it
all
all
flawed and we're all
anyway,
separate.
Yeah.
But the ultimate hope is through Christ, this will all be resolved, right? At some point.
Exactly.
And he will perfect us through himself. And that way, I think of heaven, I think it's going to be amazing to have a fully open relationship with somebody else.
Well,
It's going to be wild. Think about, even us here as church, there are certain things that you don't want to tell me about yourself because you think I'm going to be judgmental. And there's going to be certain things I don't want to tell you because I think you're going to be judgmental. But in heaven, everybody's, we're going to know. And we're all going to be forgiven. And there'll be nothing to hide. And imagine what a relationship would be like with full openness. Even our marriages are still flawed somewhat, right, because of this.
but
I think it's going to be amazing. I don't think we on earth could really fully comprehend it, right?
Right.
I was listening to a talk radio show this week.
Oh, no.
It just stopped me and it cracked me up because they were saying that if you say that the sky is blue now, you're not right because somebody else may not agree with you. If you
I saw
look
the
at
sky last
and
night.
Say the sky is blue.
It was pink.
Then you may be wrong. And I'm saying, what? What is this all about? I cracked up. And they said, well, it's because of people that may be colorblind, they can't see blue, they see gray. And I'm saying,
Hey,
well, I've been wrong all these years.
it's a good point, though.
I know it's a good point, but still, I'm scared to look up and say, hey, what a pretty blue sky today.
or maybe Brian,
over the head by
you've been colorblind, and what you think is blue is not what we see.
I got all
Maybe
that
we're
ran through my
seeing
mind.
different things.
All that ran through my mind, because I just had to stop and laugh, you know, sitting there, and if it didn't get just plain crazy. I mean, you know, you call it what you want. I mean, I tell people that all the time. You give it the name you want to give it. I don't really care.
Yeah.
You know, this is what I call it.
Well, that's what you get into there is just relativism. Like, what is truth?
What is the
Right?
truth?
Well, that's blue for you,
What do you go
right?
by? I don't know.
Whereas God is the absolute market. Like, think of that phrase. Like, Jesus is the cornerstone of the church, right?
You know,
Well, what is a cornerstone meant for? It's a foundation, but it's also meant for, well, you probably got an idea, Daryl. What do we use cornerstones for?
markers.
As at least a starting point, right? For now, I'm sure Daryl's got like GPS drones and stuff like that. But like the cornerstone would be, this is where we're all going to agree to start the markers, right?
Right.
It's a reference point. Now, you can go build a building, but if you don't have a cornerstone, this goes over here and this goes over here, whereas the cornerstone sets it. From here, this is where this wall goes. From here, this is where this pipe goes. And Jesus is that cornerstone for us. From here, this is what's acceptable. From here, this is what's not acceptable, right? You have a foundation, right? He's given you a place to start from. Now, you take Jesus out of the equation, like the rest of the world, well, hey.
Doesn't mean anything.
And once you realize that, it starts to explain why the world is the way it is. Because there's no place to start from. And so they're all over the place.
There's no structure.
Right? There's no structure. And there's no sense in it. Right? When you look at it.
Going back to some of the gay discussion, when we talk about Philadelphia, is the fact that we were talking about when we got here, that the Constitution was written up in a town called Philadelphia.
Yep.
Town of brotherly love.
Mm-hmm.
Did they go back into reference of what's going on in Philadelphia now to take all this God written up part to Philadelphia
Yeah.
for this
Well,
reason?
At least the Constitution was written in Philadelphia, not Sardis. Right? Let's be thankful for that.
Neat town to see.
Yeah. I haven't been there. It's on my list.
Hands turned
Absolutely
anyway,
love it.
you know, and
Yeah. All right. Well,
You'll get chill bugs.
we got people coming in, so we'll close. But
they
if,
listen to the lesson.
yeah. So if you have any questions, next week we've got our last church at Laodicea, and then if we have time, we'll start talking about dispensationalism and all that. If we can, we'll finish next week, and then we'll start our new lesson the week after. If not, it may be 2 weeks. So that's where we're at. Any thoughts or closing questions or anything before we close? All right. Well, let's close in prayer. Father, thank you for this opportunity for us to come together and study your word. I pray that you'll be with us as we go into the world, to be like Philadelphia, to be small but mighty, and to never deny your name, and to be a faithful witness to you and to the world. I pray that you'll watch over us and keep us safe until we come back next week. In Jesus' name I ask. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you all for coming. As always.
There's all these people. You got a variety there, didn't you?
Morning. How are y'all? I'm doing all right.